The wail cut through the stillness of the night like a forgotten memory surfacing unbidden. It was the town's siren, that old civil defense relic perched on the hill overlooking Willow Creek, sounding sharp and insistent. But there were no flashing lights from fire trucks, no urgent broadcasts on the local radio, just the piercing tone echoing off the empty streets. Lasting a full minute before fading into silence, Emily stirred in her bed, heart pounding as she glanced at the clock. 2:17 a.m. She waited for the follow-up. The all-clear, the explanation that never came. By morning, the incident felt like a half-remembered dream. Emily Harper, 32 and single, poured her first cup of coffee in the cramped kitchen of her bungalow on Elm Street. The house was one of those modest ranch-style homes common in Willow Creek, a small town nestled in the rolling hills of upstate New York, where everyone knew your business but pretended not to. She'd bought the place 2 years ago after her divorce, drawn by the quiet streets lined with maple trees and the promise of a fresh start away from the city's clamor. Her days followed a predictable rhythm. Open the diner at 6 a.m., serve eggs and bacon to the regulars until closing at 3 p.m. Then unwind with a book or a walk along the creek that gave the town its name. That morning, as she drove her faded blue Subaru down Main Street, the town seemed unchanged. The hardware store's sign creaked gently in the breeze, and old Mr. Allen was already sweeping the sidewalk outside the post office. Emily waved through her window, and he nodded back with his usual gruff smile. At the diner, Dottie, her boss and surrogate mother figure, was flipping pancakes behind the counter. "Morning, Em. Busy night?" Dottie asked, her voice carrying that warm Midwestern lilt, even though they were firmly in the northeast. Emily slid onto a stool for her break, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. "You hear that siren last night? Woke me right up." Dottie paused, spatula mid-air. "Siren? Must have slept through it. Probably just a test. They do those sometimes." But Emily hadn't imagined it. The sound had been too real, too urgent. She let it go, chalking it up to the thin walls of her house. The breakfast rush kept her mind occupied. Truckers nursing black coffee, locals gossiping about the high school football game. By noon, the diner hummed with the clatter of plates and the sizzle of the grill. As she cleared a table near the window, she noticed the sky darkening unexpectedly, clouds rolling in from the west like uninvited guests. Then it happened again. Just after 1 p.m., the siren pierced the air. This time, it was daylight and the town should have stirred into action, but the streets outside remained calm. No one in the diner flinched. A family at the corner booth continued their conversation about vacation plans, the father's laughter cutting through the wail as if it were background noise. Emily froze, plate in hand, staring out the window. The siren's tower was visible from here, a squat metal structure against the grey sky, its light bar dark and still. "Dottie! You hear that?" Emily called over the noise, her voice tighter than she intended. Dottie glanced up from the register, unfazed. "Hear what, hon? The lunch crowd's rowdy today." The siren droned on for another minute, then stopped. Emily's skin prickled. She stepped outside, the cool air hitting her face. A couple strolled by the flower shop across the street, arm in arm, oblivious. She walked to the edge of the parking lot, peering down the road toward the town hall. No emergency vehicles, no gathering crowds, just the faint hum of life resuming, tires on pavement, a dog barking in the distance. Back inside, she busied herself with refills, but the unease lingered like a shadow. That afternoon, after her shift, she stopped at the gas station on the outskirts of town. The pumps were old, the kind with a ding every few gallons, and the attendant, a kid named Jake from the local community college, was restocking shelves. "Hey, Jake, that siren today, did you catch it?" He looked at her blankly, wiping his hands on his apron. "Siren. Nah, must have been out back. Everything okay?" Emily forced a smile, pumping her gas while her mind raced. Maybe the tower was malfunctioning. Willow Creek wasn't exactly high-tech. The whole place ran on a shoestring budget, with volunteer firemen and a single traffic light. She drove home along the winding county road, flanked by cornfields that stretched into the haze. The radio played classic rock, but she turned it off, preferring the quiet. Her house came into view, porch light still on from the night before, a habit from living alone. Inside, she kicked off her shoes and headed to the kitchen for a glass of water. That's when she noticed it. The back door, the one leading to the yard, was slightly ajar. She always locked it, always. A breeze must have nudged it open, she told herself. Though the air was still, she secured it firmly, double-checking the deadbolt, and sank onto the couch with her laptop. A quick search for Willow Creek's siren test yielded nothing recent. No announcements, no local news bites, just old articles about tornado drills from the 90s. As evening fell, the house grew quieter. Emily cooked a simple pasta dinner, the steam fogging the window over the sink. She ate alone at the table, the tick of the wall clock marking time. Outside, the neighborhood settled into its routine, porch lights flickering on, distant murmurs of televisions. But around 8 p.m., as she washed dishes, a faint echo stirred in her memory. Not the siren this time, but something subtler, a soft creak from the hallway, like floorboards settling. She dried her hands and stepped into the dim corridor, flipping on the light. Everything looked normal, the coat rack by the door, her shoes neatly aligned. Yet, as she turned back, her gaze caught on the side table in the living room. The small stack of mail she'd left there that morning, bills and flyers, had shifted. The top envelope, addressed to her in her own handwriting, lay askew, as if someone had rifled through it and not bothered to straighten up. Emily's pulse quickened. She hadn't touched it since sorting the post before work. A draft from the back door, but she'd locked it. She picked up the envelope, turning it over. Nothing missing, just disturbed. Shaking her head, she restacked them precisely and retreated to her bedroom, drawing the curtains tight. Lying in the dark, she replayed the day. The siren twice, unacknowledged, the door, the mail. Coincidences, surely. Willow Creek was safe, predictable. But as sleep tugged at her, a whisper of doubt took root. Why did it feel like the town was holding its breath, waiting for her to notice? The clock on her nightstand glowed 11:45 p.m. Outside, the wind rustled the leaves, carrying no warnings. Yet in the silence that followed, Emily lay awake, listening for the sound that shouldn't come. The next morning dawned grey and heavy, the kind of overcast sky that pressed down on Willow Creek like a lid on a simmering pot. Emily woke with a start, the remnants of a restless night clinging to her like damp sheets. She hadn't heard the siren again, but sleep had come in fits, interrupted by every creak of the house settling or the distant hum of a car on the county road. Rubbing her eyes, she padded to the kitchen, the floor cool under her bare feet. The mail on the side table sat exactly as she'd left it the night before, neat, undisturbed. A small relief, though the memory of its disarray gnawed at the edges of her mind. She brewed coffee stronger than usual, the aroma filling the small space and grounding her. Today was her day off, a rare Friday, unclaimed by the diner's demands. She planned to run errands in town, maybe stop by the library for that mystery novel she'd been eyeing. Routine would chase away the shadows, she told herself. Grabbing her keys, she stepped out onto the porch, locking the door with deliberate care, front and back just to be sure. The neighborhood stirred lazily. Mrs. Ellis across the street watering her geraniums, a jogger pounding the sidewalk in neon sneakers. Normal, predictable. Driving down Elm Street, Emily tuned the radio to the local station, WCKR, where the morning host bantered about the weather and the upcoming county fair. No mention of siren tests or malfunctions. She pulled into the parking lot of the IGA, the town's only grocery store, its faded red awning flapping in the light breeze. Inside, the aisles were quiet, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as she pushed a cart toward the produce section. Apples gleamed under the mist, and she selected a few, their weight solid in her hand. That's when she saw him, Sheriff Harlan's deputy, Tom Riley, browsing the cereal aisle. Tom was a fixture in Willow Creek, broad-shouldered and affable, the kind of cop who knew everyone's kids by name. Emily waved and he looked up with a nod. "Morning, Emily. Stocking up?" "Yeah, just the basics." She hesitated, then plunged in. "Hey, Tom, you hear anything about the siren going off? It happened twice yesterday. Once at night, once during lunch. Kinda weird, right?" He paused, box of cornflakes in hand, his expression blank for a beat too long. "Siren. Can't say I did. Everything quiet on my end. You sure it wasn't the old alarm clock or something?" Emily frowned, the cart's wheels squeaking as she shifted. "No, it was definitely the town one, up on the hill, wailed for a full minute both times." Tom chuckled softly, placing the box in his basket. "Well, if it was an emergency, I'd have been the first to know. Probably your imagination playing tricks after that late shift. Happens to the best of us." He tipped his hat and moved on, leaving her standing there amid the canned soups. Imagination. The word stuck like a burr. She finished shopping quickly, the fluorescent hum now feeling oppressive, and checked out with a forced smile to the cashier, young Lisa from the high school. Outside, the sky had thickened, threatening rain. As she loaded bags into her Subaru, a low rumble echoed, not thunder, but the siren. There it was again, slicing through the midday calm, urgent and clear. Emily dropped a bag of groceries, oranges rolling across the asphalt. She spun toward the hill, where the tower loomed in the distance, its silhouette stark against the clouds. People moved around her, a mother corralling toddlers into an SUV, an elderly man pumping gas at the adjacent station, all oblivious. The wail persisted, vibrating in her chest, then cut off abruptly. Emily's breath came shallow. She gathered the spilled fruit with trembling hands and drove home faster than she meant to, the radio forgotten. Back in her kitchen, she unpacked mechanically, the siren's echo replaying in her head. Tom's dismissal replayed too, polite but edged with something she couldn't place. Dismissal or deflection? She shook it off and decided to call Dottie. Her boss picked up on the second ring, the clatter of the diner in the background. "Em, everything all right? Thought you were off today." "I am, just that siren thing. It went off again, right outside the IGA. Did anyone at the diner mention it?" A pause, the sizzle of the grill audible. "Not a peep, hun. Sounds like you're hearing things. Maybe get some rest. That divorce took more out of you than you think." Emily gripped the phone tighter. "I'm fine, Dottie. It's not that. It's real." All right. If it bugs you, swing by the station later. Ask Tom yourself, but don't let it ruin your day." Dottie hung up with her usual briskness, leaving Emily staring at the receiver. The afternoon dragged. She tried reading on the couch, but the words blurred, her eyes drifting to the windows. Curtains drawn, but not fully. She caught glimpses of the street, empty save for a lone bicycle left propped against a fence. Around 3 p.m., thirst drove her to the kitchen for iced tea. As she reached for a glass, a sound stopped her, a faint scrape from the basement door, tucked under the stairs. The house was old, prone to noises, but this was deliberate, like a footfall on the wooden steps below. Heart thudding, she approached slowly, hand on the knob. The door was latched, as always. She never went down there, not since the damp mustiness had started giving her headaches. But peering through the small crack she'd once widened for ventilation, the darkness seemed thicker, as if it pressed back. No light from the single bulb she'd installed years ago. She flicked the hallway switch, but the bulb down there stayed dark. A blown fuse. She hadn't noticed any outages. Retreating, she latched it securely and backed away, pulse racing. Coincidences piling up, the door ajar, the mail now this. By evening, the unease had settled into a quiet paranoia. She cooked little, just a sandwich, eaten standing at the counter while scanning her phone for any forum posts about Willow Creek oddities. Nothing. The local Facebook group buzzed with fair preparations and lost pet alerts, but no sirens. As dusk fell, she ventured out for mail, bills again, routine. But flipping through them on the porch, one caught her eye, a flyer from the town hall, printed on cheap paper. Emergency preparedness drill, scheduled for next week. No date, no details. She crumpled it, but the implication lingered. Drills didn't happen unannounced, did they? Night came softly, streetlights casting long shadows through her curtains. Emily double-checked locks, even wedging a chair under the basement door for good measure. She turned on the TV for noise, some sitcom rerun, canned laughter filling the quiet. But around 10 p.m., as she brushed her teeth, the power flickered, not out, just a hesitation, lights dimming for a second, then from the backyard, a soft thud like something dropped on the grass. She froze in the bathroom doorway, toothbrush in mouth. The window overlooked the fenced yard, dark and still. No animals, no wind to knock a branch. Swallowing foam, she edged closer, peering out. Shapes shifted in the gloom, the old oak tree, the clothesline. But nothing moved. Yet the feeling persisted of eyes on her, patient and unseen. Climbing into bed, she left the hall light on, a sliver of yellow under the door. Sleep evaded her again, the house amplifying every sound, the fridge's hum, a car's distant pass. At midnight, she sat up, straining to listen. The town was silent, but in that silence she felt it, a subtle rhythm like breathing. Willow Creek, her safe haven, now seemed to exhale around her, secrets held just out of reach. And as the clock ticked toward 1, she wondered if the next wail would come from the hill. Or closer. The hours stretched thin after midnight. The house, a cocoon of shadows that Emily couldn't quite escape. She lay there, sheets tangled around her legs, staring at the ceiling fan's lazy spin. The sliver of light from the hall held back the dark, but it also sharpened the edges of her thoughts, turning them inward like a slow spiral. Willow Creek had always felt like a buffer against the world's sharper corners, a place where neighbors borrowed sugar without knocking, and the worst scandal was a fender bender at the four-way stop. But now, every quiet moment carried a weight, as if the town itself were listening, waiting for her to break the silence first. By dawn, the sky had cleared to a pale blue, mocking her vigilance. Emily rose early, the floorboards groaning under her steps like reluctant confessions. She skipped coffee, opting for tea instead, something soothing, chamomile from the tin she'd bought on a whim during a rare trip to the city. Sipping it at the kitchen table, she watched steam curl toward the window, where dew clung to the glass like tiny eyes. The flyer from last night sat crumpled beside her, its edges softened by her restless fingers. She smoothed it out again, scanning the sparse text. No signatures, no contact info, just that vague promise of a drill. It could have been slipped into her mailbox by anyone, the postman, a well-meaning neighbor, even the wind from an open slot, but the timing felt off, too neatly aligned with the siren's cries. She needed answers, real ones. After dressing in jeans and a fleece pullover, practical for the chill that lingered into October, Emily grabbed her keys and headed out. The Subaru started with a familiar rumble, and she drove toward the town hall, a squat brick building on the edge of Main Street, its flagpole bare against the morning light. Parking in the empty lot, she noted the deputy's cruiser absent, which eased a knot in her chest. Inside, the lobby smelled of polished wood and stale air, fluorescent panels humming overhead. The clerk, Mrs. Pendleton, a woman with silver hair pinned in a bun and glasses perched on her nose, looked up from her desk. "Morning, Emily. What brings you in so early? Need a permit for that garden fence?" Emily leaned on the counter, forcing a casual tone. "Actually, about the siren. It's been going off unannounced. Night before last, yesterday at lunch, and again outside the IGA. Any tests scheduled I should know about? Mrs. Pendleton's fingers paused on her keyboard, her expression unchanging, like a still pond. Siren tests? We post those in the Gazette and on the board outside. Nothing this week that I recall. You feeling all right, dear? Sounds like it might be the wind playing tricks up your way. The dismissal landed soft but firm, echoing Tom's words from the store. Emily straightened, heat rising in her cheeks. It's not the wind. I heard it clear as day, 3 times now. People acting like it's nothing, that's what's odd. The clerk offered a sympathetic smile, sliding a community bulletin across the counter. Willow Creek's full of old noises. That tower's from the Cold War era. It glitches sometimes. If it was real, the sheriff's office would be buzzing. Check with Tom if you're worried. He's in the back filing reports. Emily took the bulletin. Her thanks clipped as she turned away. The hall's corridors stretched empty, doors labeled with faded plaques. Planning, records, emergency services. She hesitated at the last one, knocking lightly. No answer. Pushing it open revealed a cluttered office, maps pinned to walls, a radio crackling faintly on the desk, empty coffee mugs ringed with stains. Tom's chair sat vacant, papers stacked haphazardly. On impulse, she stepped inside, the air thicker here, laced with ink and dust. A logbook lay open on the desk, entries in neat script. Routine patrols, a lost dog report from Elm Street, her street 2 nights ago. No mention of sirens, no alerts. Her fingers brushed the pages, a whisper of intrusion she couldn't shake. Footsteps echoed from the lobby, someone entering. She slipped out, heart quickening, and nodded politely to a janitor mopping the floor. Back in her car, the engine's hum felt too loud, accusatory. Driving home, she passed the diner, its windows steamed from the breakfast crowd. Dottie waved from inside, but Emily didn't stop. Isolation crept in now, not just from the town, but from her own routines, the places she'd once found comfort. At home, the quiet amplified everything. She paced the living room, the mail stack still pristine, the basement door unmoved. But as she glanced at the side table, a chill traced her spine. The top envelope, the one she'd restacked so carefully, bore a faint crease she didn't remember, as if it had been folded and unfolded recently. Paranoia, she chided herself, but the doubt festered. Lunch was a forgotten yogurt, eaten while scrolling her phone. Local news apps showed nothing, weather updates, a bake sale announcement. She typed Willow Creek siren malfunction into the search bar, results pulling up distant towns, unrelated glitches. Frustration built, a pressure behind her eyes. Afternoon light slanted through the curtains, turning the rooms golden but cold. Emily decided on a walk, needing air to clear her head. Bundling up, she followed the path behind her house toward the creek, where willows dipped into the water like weary sentinels. The trail was familiar, lined with wildflowers now fading to seed. Birds called overhead, a normalcy that should have soothed her. But halfway along the path curved, and she spotted it, a figure on the far bank standing still amid the reeds. Tall, hooded in a dark jacket, facing away, watching the water, or her. The distance blurred details, but the posture felt deliberate, rooted. She stopped, breath catching. "Hello?" Her voice carried thin over the rush of the stream. No response. The figure didn't turn, didn't move. A jogger? A fisherman, but no rod, no motion. Unease prickled. She backed away, retracing her steps faster, branches snagging her sleeve like warnings. By the time she reached home, sweat dampened her shirt despite the cool air. Locking the door, she peered through the kitchen window toward the creek's edge. Empty now, the reeds swaying alone. The rest of the day blurred into vigilance. She drew all curtains, the house dimming to twilight indoors while outside, Willow Creek carried on. A neighbor's lawnmower droned. Children laughed from a backyard 2 houses down. Normal sounds, but they rang hollow, as if performed for an audience of one. Dinner was takeout from the diner, picked up curbside to avoid questions, eaten with the TV on low, a documentary about small-town history, droning facts she half heard. Willow Creek's founding in 1842, its mill long gone, the Siren installed post-White Wee for air raids that never came. Irony twisted in her gut. As night approached, the sky bruised purple. Emily checked the locks again, the ritual now obsessive. The basement door got an extra latch, the back one a broom propped beneath. She settled in the living room, lights low, a blanket over her knees. The clock ticked past 8:09. No siren yet, but anticipation hummed like static. Around 10, her phone buzzed. A text from Dottie. "Everything okay. Swing by tomorrow if you're up for it." Simple, caring. Emily replied yes, but her thumb hovered, unspoken questions piling up. Then, from the hallway, a soft click, like a door easing open, though all were secured. She froze, volume muted on the TV. The house held its breath with her. Rising slowly, she crept toward the sound, flashlight app glowing on her phone. The corridor stretched dark. Doors ajar to empty rooms, but at the end, the basement latch she'd sworn it was fastened, hung loose, the door cracked an inch. Darkness yawned below, carrying a faint, musty draft. No steps, no voice, just the void inviting her closer. Emily's hand trembled on the knob. Push it open, prove it's nothing, a loose screw, a settling foundation. Or step back, let the unknown fester. The choice hung, heavy as the siren's echo in her mind. Outside, the town lights flickered on, a constellation of secrets. And in that suspended moment, she realized the wails weren't warnings of emergency. They were calls, drawing her deeper into the quiet unraveling of everything she thought she knew. Her hand hovered on the knob, the cool metal grounding her against the pull of the dark. Emily's breath came in shallow measures, each one measured against the silence pressing from below. The flashlight beam from her phone cut a narrow path into the crack, illuminating dust motes swirling like secrets disturbed. She could turn away, barricade the door, call Tom despite his blank stares, drive out of Willow Creek at first light and never look back. But the siren's wails echoed in her skull, not as alarms, but as summons, threading through the ordinary fabric of her days until it all frayed at the edges. With a resolve that felt more like surrender, she twisted the knob. The door swung inward on hinges that whispered rather than creaked, releasing a puff of stale air laced with earth and something faintly metallic. The stairs descended in shadow. 13 steps she counted once in a moment of boredom, now each one a threshold. She descended slowly, phone light sweeping the walls, rough concrete patched with age, cobwebs draping like forgotten veils. At the bottom, the basement unfolded, a low-ceilinged space cluttered with boxes from her move, the water heater humming in the corner, shelves sagging under jars of preserves she'd inherited from the previous owner. Nothing stirred, no figure lurking, no intruder to confront. Relief flickered, then soured as her beam caught the far wall, where a narrow door she'd never noticed blended into the paneling. A utility access, perhaps, or just a closet for tools. It stood ajar, the same subtle invitation as the back door nights ago. Emily approached, heart a steady drum in her ears. Pushing it open revealed not storage, but a short tunnel of sorts, bricked and musty, leading to what looked like an old fuse box embedded in the wall. Wires snaked from it, thicker than household gauge, disappearing into the ceiling. She traced them with her light, following their path upward. The house was old, built in the 50s when Willow Creek expanded with post-war optimism, but this setup felt deliberate, hidden. Kneeling, she examined the box. Dials worn smooth, a small speaker grill coated in grime. No labels, but etched faintly on the metal plate, CD-47 Auxiliary. Civil defense, she realized, the same era as the hilltop siren, relics of fears that had faded but not vanished. Her fingers brushed a switch, and a faint static hissed from the grill, like breath held too long. Upstairs, the house waited unchanged, but Emily's steps felt heavier as she climbed back, latching the door with finality. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she sat at the kitchen table until dawn, the flyer smoothed flat before her. The words blurred under tired eyes, but patterns emerged in her mind. The siren's timings aligning with her routines after shifts during errands, pulling her attention inward. By morning, resolve hardened. She dressed quickly, skipping the walk, and drove straight to the hardware store on Main, where Mr. Harlan stocked bolts and advice in equal measure. "Morning, Emily. Need some paint for that trim?" He wiped his hands on a rag, his face creased with the easy familiarity of small-town commerce. She leaned on the counter, voice steady. "Actually, about the old civil defense stuff. You remember when they installed those auxiliaries in basements for alerts during the Cold War?" Harlan paused, setting down a screwdriver, his eyes sharpening behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Auxiliaries? Sure. Some houses got 'em, backup for the main siren, in case of blackouts or whatever. Why?" "Just curious. Found one in my basement. Wires running up like it could broadcast." He nodded slowly, no surprise in his posture, just the measured recall of a man who'd seen decades unfold. "Yeah, they tested those quietly back in the day. Folks didn't like the racket during drills. Yours still hooked up. Town shut most down years ago, but glitches happen. Wind, animals, sets 'em off." Emily's throat tightened. "Glitches that no one else hears." Harlan's gaze held hers, a beat longer than casual. "Willow Creek's got its ways, Em. Quiet town, but echoes carry. If it's bothering you, I can take a look. No charge for a neighbor." She declined with a murmur, buying a flashlight battery instead, something tangible to hold on to. Driving home, the county road stretched empty, cornfields whispering in the breeze. The figure by the creek replayed in her thoughts, hooded and still, but now it felt less like a threat and more like a mirror, her own isolation reflected back. At the house, she bypassed the kitchen and went straight to the basement again. Armed with tools from Harlan's shop, a screwdriver, wire cutters, the auxiliary box yielded slowly. Panels pried open revealed a tangle of circuits, a small reel-to-reel tape deck, dusty but intact. No power source visible, yet when she connected a loose wire to the house current, careful, insulated, the machine whirred to life. Static crackled, then a voice emerged, faint and distorted. "This is a test of the emergency broadcast system. Stand by for further instructions." Not the siren's wail, but words, looping from some long-ago recording. Emily's skin crawled as she listened, the message repeating, innocuous on the surface. But layered beneath, almost subliminal, a pattern. Her name, whispered once, twice, in a tone that mimicked Dottie's warmth, Tom's casual drawl. "Emily. And everything quiet. Hear what, hon?" She yanked the plug, the silence rushing back like a held breath released. The tape. How? She'd lived here 2 years, unpacked every box, yet this hid in plain sight. Upstairs, she sealed the access door with boards from the garage, hammering nails with a fury that echoed through the empty rooms. The act felt futile, like patching a leak in a sinking ship. Afternoon wore on, the sun slanting low, casting bars of light across the floor. She called Dottie, voice clipped. "I'm coming in tomorrow. Need to talk." "Good, hun. We'll sort it." But the line's pause lingered in Emily's ear long after hanging up. Evening brought no wail from the hill, but the house hummed with its own rhythm, the fridge's cycle, the settling beams, her own pulse. She ate little, staring at the walls as if they might confess. Around midnight, as she lay in bed, the auxiliary's echo resurfaced in dreams, the town speaking through wires, acknowledging her in ways no one would admit. Willow Creek wasn't malfunctioning. It was murmuring to her alone, drawing her into its quiet fold, where emergencies were personal, unspoken, Dawn broke without fanfare, the neighborhood stirring to life. Emily rose, packed a small bag, just overnight things, she told herself, and locked the house one last time. Driving down Elm Street, the diner came into view, its neon sign flickering to life. She parked, stepping inside to the sizzle of bacon and murmured greetings. Dottie slid a coffee across the counter, eyes searching. "Rough night?" Emily met her gaze, the words forming slow. "The siren. It's not a glitch. It's in my basement. Old system, broadcasting to me." Dottie's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Basement? Sounds like you need a break, Em. Sit. Eat something." But as regulars nodded hello, their faces blurred into sameness. Tom at a booth, Harlan nursing coffee, even the family from the other day. The air thickened, conversations overlapping in a hush. Outside, through the window, the hilltop tower stood silent, yet Emily felt its pull, a thread tugging her back. She left without eating, the bag untouched. Driving out of town, the county road unspooled ahead, endless under the overcast sky. Willow Creek shrank in the rear view, its streets folding into memory. But as miles accumulated, a faint hum persisted, not from the engine but deeper, like the siren's ghost in her chest. Had it ever sounded at all? Or was the real emergency the unraveling certainty that the town had let her in, only to watch her question the invitation? The road curved on, and Emily drove into the haze, the quiet pursuit unbroken.